Welcome to Moments with Marianne. I'm so excited we're spending this time here today. We've got quite a show lined up. Our first guest, Suzanne Scurlock-Durana, is here today to talk to us about her new book, Reclaiming Your Body. So welcome to the show, Susanna.
Thank you, Marianne.
Oh, what a joy it is to have you here.
Well, it's wonderful to be with you.
Well, and you are one of the world's leading authorities on conscious awareness and its transformational impact on healing for over 30 years. What inspired you to write this book?
Well, actually, I think that the most pivotal moment for me with this was in practicing and teaching craniosacral therapy and realizing that not only was every cell of our body, in yours, mine, everyone's body, has its own level of wisdom and intelligence, but that there were actually, for want of a better word, there were areas in the body or neighborhoods where there was a particular kind of characteristic wisdom. And I would see it again and again. And if you look at our language, you see it. And each one of the chapters that's about a different wisdom area has that language down the sidebar of each chapter. But things like the fact that the heart is like the home of our inspiration. And you think about it with language, we say, oh my gosh, her heart was on fire with that. Or, it was a really easy piece to see. The same with the gut, gut wisdom, your gut hunch, your gut knowing about something, the pelvis really being the engine of the body. And all of these different wisdom areas of the body, and I just picked the 6 main areas. Every cell of the body has wisdom and has intelligence, but these were just sort of the major neighborhoods, if you will, that I could say, this is what I've seen again and again well over 30 years, thousands and thousands of students, that I've seen this to be true. And so I began to think, you know what? People need to know this. People need to know that they have this wisdom because most people are actually pretty cut off from it, with trauma being one of the major things that cuts us off first and foremost.
Well, and in your book, you talk about so much and it was so inspiring. One of the things that you discuss is that there's a misperception that the body knows less than the brain. And I thought to myself, you know what, I can kind of probably fall in that category too of people who have thought that, because we just don't really put that much emphasis on the body being able to do what it can. And so I was really, that for me, that was a very powerful statement to kind of look at that in a different perspective.
Yeah. And I have to say, if I hadn't done craniosacral therapy and seen the transformation and seen the healing that can happen with that therapy through the wisdom of the body for 35 years, I really would doubt myself that the body knows really far more than the brain does, and that the body actually is a large part, and the signals it sends to the brain, sensory signals, other signals that it sends to the brain, it actually helps the brain to function better. When people are cut off from their bodies, they may have a knowledge, like an educational knowledge, but they don't have sort of the life experience knowledge that the body has, so to speak.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I think of it as the body knows the body knows about life and about direct experience of life. The brain knows about education and head knowledge. Am I making sense?
Oh, yeah. Perfect sense. Well, and I think it's a new way for people to look at things where our bodies are actually communicating with us on a deeper level, to be aware of that.
Yeah. All the time. All the time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, and so I know that the work you do, it does healing in many different ways, and one of the ways that you touch on is really the trauma aspect and how that can really be healed, by listening to the body and communicating with the body. Have you ever come across a trauma that is this like unhealable? And what are some of the types of traumas that can be healed throughout the body?
Those are two big questions, but
I know. I kind of gave you a loaded one there.
Well, your first question was, have I ever run across a trauma that was
unhealable? Yeah.
Okay. What I will say is that I believe, in my experience, any trauma can be healed. It's only a question of how long it will take to heal it, how many sessions, how much work on the part of the person who has been traumatized. Are they really willing to put their time and effort into the healing process? Because if they are, the skill sets are now out there to help them, not only in the psychological world, but in the body work world, the combination of the two. There is a lot out there right now to help people heal from trauma. And I don't know. I know that I can tell you that some people have more trauma than others. Some people it's going to be a longer journey than others.
Yeah.
But I've never seen someone who couldn't heal if they wanted to. Okay.
I think that's really assuring for a lot of people because, sometimes I think people would want to hold on to things saying, gosh, but my trauma is really bad, or, because it could have been like childhood abuse or sexual assault or surgery, whatever, whatever they have going on. So.
Yeah. And there are so many pieces that we can really look at in terms of trauma and what constitutes trauma. Do you know what constitutes what can go wrong? And I have to say that in today's day and age, there's so much trauma going on. I just did a workshop in London in which I was talking about what constitutes trauma. You have emotional trauma around losses, losing a job, a spouse, a close relationship. You have the physical trauma that can happen to the body from a bad fall, from an injury, from a car accident, from a rape, from an assault. You have iatrogenic trauma, like that means something that happens by your doctor or your surgical, dental work, surgery. Mm-hmm. Waking up during an ongoing surgery can be extremely and complex trauma to deal with. Watching or hearing about a traumatic event while being helpless to do anything about it. So think about the world watching the 9/11 towers come down. There was a lot of PTSD in the New York area after that because people felt helpless to do anything about it. You also can have gestational delivery or post-delivery trauma. But it was very, very interesting piece by a gentleman by the name of Dawson Church, who's a PhD psychologist. And he refined this definition down just a little bit more, and he said, traumatic event is one in which someone perceives that there is a serious threat to their own survival, their own physical survival, that they're overwhelmed by it, their coping capacity is overwhelmed, and that thus they end up with a sense of powerlessness. It produces, something really traumatic, produces a feeling of isolation and aloneness often, and it does what he calls violating their expectations, meaning there's a betrayal. Somebody that they thought was going to be a friend ends up betraying them. You think about the story in my book about my dear friend who, coming off of amphetamines, strangled me and almost killed me. It was a clear violation of my expectation that he was my friend. I also felt weirdly like I had done something wrong. So I definitely ended up with a sense of isolation around it. But my parents were wonderful. My friends were wonderful. So it was, that was not as bad. I definitely felt powerless in the face of it as it was happening. I mean, I didn't have a whole lot of time to even really think about it. And I definitely almost lost my life. So my physical survival was that my perception of the threat was real. So see, all of these four things come together. And I think Dawson's right. I think that that this is a really key piece. And because of this definition, there is a way in which more and more people are experiencing trauma in their lives that stays stuck in their bodies. And that's the problem. Because when you have trauma locked in the body, it essentially locks you out of the sensations of the present moment. You then are caught in the past from whatever occurred, and you see this with people who have had flashbacks from military trauma, like Vietnam vets, where they're just constantly being pulled back into whatever that traumatic memory was. And everything looks like something that's familiar to them based on that trauma. So the past continues to haunt them, and I think of them as being pulled into the past on a regular basis. By the same token, they can also be pulled into the future of anxiety and worry about it happening again. So essentially, when trauma, particularly big trauma, is locked in the body, it isolates us from the present moment where all of the body's wisdom, all the sensory body wisdom is located. So trauma has a particularly crippling effect on us as human beings when it stays locked in the body and doesn't get healed and released. Am I making sense?
Yeah, that makes absolutely perfect sense. And I think addressing it, because you raised such a good topic around this and discussion around this, that there are, because, everyone, you talk about vets or people who have gone through different life experiences. Everyone has experienced a trauma to one degree or another, and it's how they are looking to move through that, and get to the other side of it. And I think it's important for them to explore, how that correlation of that trauma impacts the body, which you talk about in your book, as it goes unresolved, and some of the things they can do to address that.
Yes. And the whole point of the book is to wake people up to the fact that we do lose the sense of our own body. And so it is really about reclaiming your physical, psychological, energetic sense of who you are at a body level in order to regain your inner wisdom and the power of your navigational system.
Mm-hmm. I think it provides a lot of freedom, because then we're not a victim to that trauma that replays over and over and over again in different situations or in illnesses or what have you.
Yep, absolutely. I agree 100%.
Now, in your book, you talk about how our body can get out of touch with ourselves. So you touched on it a little bit with being in the present moment. So what does that really mean, and what are some examples of that? When we get out of touch with our bodies, and generally this happens because something's too painful, something's too uncomfortable. There's some sense of, as Dawson Church said, there's a sense of powerlessness, or the pain is just too much. So let me tamp it down. Let me push it away, either by locking it away internally, usually unconsciously, or dissociating at some level. People who have received a lot of early repetitive trauma are usually very adept at dissociating from the felt sense of the body, and that helps them tremendously to survive stuff that is horrendous and that they would otherwise really be taken down by. But it also cuts them off from the wisdom of the body. Yeah. And then they would be just operating out of that, how you talked about kind of earlier, out of just that instinct of that past experience. Mm-hmm. I talk about it as my dear late friend Emily Conrad used to say, you lose the capacity to self-reference. You can no longer feel what's happening right now in this present moment. My belly feels relaxed. My heart feels excited about talking to you. I can feel my butt cheeks in the chair I'm sitting in. I can feel what's happening in my body at this moment. When you have trauma, you lose track of that, and the only thing that you can reference each current moment from, or each experience you're having is by something that happened in the past.
so you've now left the present moment. And if what you're referencing in the past was something traumatic, now the current moment feels like it might potentially be traumatic. And so you've got a very skewed perception of what's coming. You miss the joy in life because you're constantly, the glass is half empty, if not scary half empty. Okay? Am I making sense here?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Because, it's kind of like if you have a trauma around spiders and you see a spider every time, it's going to freak you out.
Yeah.
It's a very simple example, but
That's a simple example, but it is very much. I don't know if I talked about it in this book. I know I talked about it in my first book, Full Body Presence. But after that situation where I was strangled when I was 17, I spent several years really unable to be in isolated circumstances, particularly dark cars, which is where it happened, with men. It could be my father. It could have been my brother. It didn't make any difference. I would start to have an overwhelming sense of panic that somehow there was something wrong with me that caused that anger to come out in him and for him to strangle me, and that it was going to happen again because there was something wrong with me. I was responsible for what happened. And that panicky feeling would rise to the surface, and I would have to do everything I could to push it back down and say, this is my father, I'm safe, or this is my brother, I'm safe, or this is my boyfriend, I know I'm safe, because I wasn't really sure I was. I couldn't actually track accurately whether there was danger in the current moment because I was locked out of my body. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's like you're replaying that trauma that happened that brings you back to that time where you felt unsafe. So there we go again. So let's say, because I know you've helped thousands of people, and you do these amazing workshops all over the country. In fact, I can't wait for you to come by my neck of the woods because I definitely want to be in one of your workshops. I know that let's say you have someone that comes up and says, you know what, I've had all these things happen and I just don't even know where to start. How do you start even working with somebody like that, or what would you even offer to them as far as this is where we go?
Okay. So the thing that I do, and actually I had this happen just last week in a workshop in London. A person that I was demonstrating with actually had one of the longest litanies of trauma I've ever heard, and the young man was only 39 years old.
Wow.
So it was really quite startling. But we basically started by holding and helping him to begin to drop back into some key areas of his own body: his breath, his bones, his heart, down into his gut, into his sacrum, into the pelvis. And then what was fascinating, now I was combining touch therapy, I was using craniosacral therapy, with the helping him to drop back in deeper and deeper into his own body. And the stories just started to roll out and leave his system as he told the stories. It was like they were waves coming off of his body because he had new resources. He was grounded. He was present. He wasn't just replaying these old things. It was like he was being held in a safe container of energy for him to reclaim his own power and step back into it around these particular issues of things that had happened. Am I making sense here?
Yeah.
It was powerful.
Must have just looked lighter just being there.
He was just, when he got off the table, it was amazing. And there were points in that session where there was not a dry eye in the room. I mean, the people watching the session, it was because it was so deeply touching. And he was so courageous. But because of the power of the group, the energy of a circle of people, me holding and just being with him and listening and witnessing and acknowledging, and also helping him to see that he wasn't alone in it anymore. He wasn't powerless, and that his body could let go of it, and he could begin to drop more and more and more back into areas that he had really been pretty well locked out of. Yeah.
Wow.
And that's very, very powerful. Yeah.
It's just powerful hearing it.
Well, it was just amazing, and I, that's why I love what I do because I'm watching people come back alive. The trauma locks us out of our aliveness. And to be able to regain your deep aliveness is so exciting for people. And it's so exciting for me to witness that. It's really an honor for me.
Yeah, especially when you've had people that are that have been kind of just locked in that trauma for years and years and years and years, to be able to really work through that and release it and just watch them come out the other side has just got to be amazing.
Yeah. And I have gotten to watch that. And I mean, the sad part is listening to the trauma histories that come up. The glad part is watching those trauma histories roll out of the body and dissipate, and watching these people be able to reclaim themselves, their power, their creativity, their joy, their vitality. Wow. I mean, it's amazing, and I really love it. Yeah.
Oh, goodness. Well, and in your book, we're not going to cover them all because we do want people to go pick up Reclaiming Your Body. I mean, they've got to go get their copy, and there's you give some great free stuff that go along with that as well on your website. In your book, you talk about these areas, the 6 wisdom areas within the body. Can you, we're not going to go over all of them. Why don't we either talk about like the heart or the gut, and how that would speak to us, and as far as a wisdom area?
Well, the heart, of course, has to do with inspiration, being on fire about something, really feeling deeply inspired by your life, what you're doing, who you are. And it could be something like being deeply inspired about raising a family. It could be being deeply inspired about the work you're doing in the world. It could be being deeply inspired about anything that is yours to do at a soul level, if you will. And I think that part of what I say to people is your heart is an area that when you truly, truly live in the entirety of your heart from front to back, you not only have a deeper capacity to be inspired by life, to feel compassion, but to really deeply love yourself so that you stay resourced about what it is that you want to do and how you want to go about it. And I think, but I want a partner. One of the 2 pieces that are really important in terms of these 2, the wisdom areas, are the heart and the gut. Because the heart can be deeply inspired by something that's not actually very well grounded in the present moment. And the gut, I mean, we know this. You meet somebody and like, oh, it's great, it's wonderful, but then your gut is all the time kind of tapping you on the shoulder and going, wait a minute, this may not be the smartest thing to do. Look again. And when that happens, your gut and your partner, when your gut partners with your heart, you make much better decisions than when it's just your heart or just your gut, right? And my whole point throughout the book is these wisdom areas, along with all the other cells of our body, are meant to be integrated together. They're all meant to be constantly speaking and talking and making decisions together as a committee. My whole thing about the brain is not the boss anymore. And really, current neuroscience is pointing this out. The body has tremendous, tremendous information it gives to the brain. And it needs to be informed by the body and the other way around. Yeah. Does that make sense?
Well, and it really, again, it offers people, I think, a lot of hope, because it's like, I can work on this trauma, I can get reconnected with my body and kind of sit and feel where areas maybe are not where they should be,
right.
As far as connectiveness, and then be able to make adjustments on that, and it could either be by, of course, we want them to pick up your book, which is just amazing. I love it. Or they can attend one of your workshops and get more information there as well, Yeah.
And, I think that one of the key pieces that I have refined across the years is a core set of what I call audio explorations that actually walks people into their body by asking a series of questions and asking you just to notice, what's in here?
Mm-hmm.
What's in your inner landscape? Because everyone's inner landscape is unique to them. And then the first three explorations that I do that are in both my first book and then get repeated in my second book because they're so foundational. The third exploration basically says we all have areas that we're locked out of. Everyone. And as we continue to grow and develop and become more wise and heal, we learn how to hold and have compassion and goodwill for the parts of ourselves that we're locked out of in a very visceral way until these parts come back into connection, get healed and open and become part of who we are again rather than being locked out of them, so that we have more and more available to us of the container of our body, so that we do get back vitality, joy, creativity. Creativity, wow, how that begins to really show up on people's screens as their healing gets farther and farther down the road. They have more energy available for that, and that's really lovely.
And what a great place to be in, to have that full connectiveness that, we really all desire. No one wants to be carrying around, old trauma with them that really colors how they perceive the world today, but also, how our health is being determined by it as well. We don't want to carry that around. We want to get rid of that stuff.
Right. And in fact, this has been a fact that's been known by people in the body work world for over 2 decades, 3 decades really, but it's just really beginning to get to the mainstream, how past trauma affects our current health. And I talk in the book about the ACE study, the Adverse Childhood Events. And there are 10 basic ones that they speak about. And it was done by Kaiser Permanente, over 17,000 people, how the mainstream is actually starting to get it, that all the trauma that we accumulate across the course of our lives, if we continue to hold it in our bodies, will have a seriously detrimental effect on our health as we reach into our 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s. Begins to take a tremendous toll. And to release the trauma, to reclaim your body, to really come back into your vitality and joy is hugely important for your health as well.
Isn't it nice that finally science is catching up with that? Because I know from a spiritual and energetic standpoint, and just seeing what what you know, and seeing what you've seen all these years, you are able to identify that. But then to have science also come and say, oh yeah, by the way, this research backs up what you already know.
Mm-hmm. This research backs up what I've seen clinically and in my classes for 3 decades. That's what's exciting, that the science is actually there now. And it's exciting science because it's also hopeful science. Neuroplasticity, it really is something that just became apparent in the scientific world in the 1990s, for Pete's sake. And yet I was seeing people have major changes in their cognition, in their bodies, back in the 70s and 80s, because I knew that it happened for me, and I knew that it was happening to my students. I knew that it was possible to people in my practice, and yet I couldn't tell you why they were capable of doing it, because in those days it was thought that once you reach adulthood, your brain is your brain. You don't make new brain cells, and we now know that's completely false. So, yeah, so that's kind of one of the exciting parts about all of this.
Yeah. Oh, well, Suzanne, where can people connect with you and be part of your just amazing community and learn more about all the great stuff that you do?
Well, there are many places, but they could start by going to my website, which is healingfromthecore, CORE.com. And that's a place where you will see a lot. What I just finished doing yesterday was I teach at Esalen, at the Esalen Institute every year. And those of you who have been following the news about Big Sur know that there's a whole island in Big Sur that's essentially now cut off from the rest of the country. And Esalen sits in that island. So I won't be teaching there this summer, but I'm actually going to be teaching at a brand new retreat center in the Santa Cruz Mountains, the Redwood Forests. gorgeous, gorgeous place called 1440, the number 1440. It's the number of minutes in a day, 1440.org. I have 2 classes coming up, a 4-day workshop, a 3-day workshop, and a 5-day workshop at the very end of August and over the Labor Day weekend. And I would love to see any of your listeners there. That will be open for registration. In fact, it is open now when you're going to air this radio show. And I don't think it'll be full by then, so double check in with 1440 and see if there's a place for you. If not, on my website there are many other workshops all over the world, and I think that would be fun to have any of your listeners show up. And I love working with people in person even more than hearing from people who have read my book and worked with the audio, the free audio that goes with the book.
Mm-hmm. Well, and, I mean, this says a lot about your work. I mean, 1440, for those of our listeners that are kind of new to hearing about this, I mean, it is the who's who of just, consciousness and evolution as far as education goes. So I'm not surprised that you're there teaching a class. And if they don't, if your class sells out, they may need to just keep you and have another one.
Well, I have family in California now, so I might go out there more than once a year. So we'll see. We'll see.
See how that all works. Well, Suzanne, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show with us here today.
Thank you. This has been absolutely a delight. Thank you, Marianne.
Oh, yes, and it's been such a joy. Make sure to pick up Suzanne's book, Reclaiming Your Body. We're going to pause here for a quick break, and we'll be right back after these messages.
Internationally recognized and award-winning author Judy Goodman works and teaches outside the box of limited thinking. Working with people from every walk of life, her goal is to empower you to be the best you can be, no matter what the challenge is. Born with the gift of seeing beyond our normal vision, she has an extraordinary gift of working with every challenge. Teaching beyond conventional wisdom, her work is described as life-changing. Visit judygoodman.com. That's judygoodman.com.
Have you ever had the sense that your thoughts might actually be doing something? Ancient secrets of manifesting have been masterfully revealed in the award-winning book Manifesting 1-2-3 by Ken Elliott. For the first time, the author's experiences and stories in this book describe exactly how your thoughts can create anything. You've been doing this all your life, but it's never been fully explained for you until now. Visit manifesting123.com for more information today. Manifesting123.com.
This is Jennifer McGill. My highly anticipated new album, Unbreakable, is now available at jennifermcgill.com. Everything from power ballads to high-energy jam-out-in-your-car songs. I used my highest joys and deepest pains to create empowering songs of love, strength, healing, and restoration so that you can be unbreakable too. Get your copy of Unbreakable today from jennifermcgill.com. Because who doesn't want to be unbreakable?
The highly acclaimed and newly released book, The Hand Part 2 by Lynn Van Praagh Grattan, describes the journey between a psychic medium and a family who lost a son. Messages from Beyond Eternity's Gate is of love and healing. For more information, visit www.lynnvanpraagh-grattan.com. That's www.lynnvanpraagh-grattan.com.
Welcome to Moments with Marianne. I'm so excited we're spending this time here today together. Our next guest is Dr. Christopher Sowton, and he's here today to talk to us about his book, Dreamworking, How to Listen to the Inner Guidance of Your Dreams. So welcome to the show, Dr. Christopher.
Thank you. Thanks very much for having me.
Oh, what a joy it is to have you here. And so this is quite the book. If you're looking to figure out what's going on with your dreams and
and really kind of go down that path, and also for practitioners. And so I have to ask you, what inspired you to write this book?
Well, you just touched on it there. Two things. One is to train practitioners who would like to be doing some dream work in their practices, and that's a really important thing to me. Mm-hmm. And another is just for everybody who dreams, whether you're a practitioner or not, whether, just that you would like to get into better touch with your own personal dream life. So the book really speaks to both of those. It's voiced for everybody, not like my first book was voiced for practitioners, as if, you were going to Dreamworking college and you were trying to learn how to become a professional dream worker. Mm-hmm. This book is a little bit different. It's just directed at, it's for everybody. Everybody who dreams, which is everybody, and and everybody who would like to get more out of those dreams, whether they want to do it professionally or not.
Well, and I think it's so good to have a baseline as far as for practitioners, as far as education goes in understanding dreams, because there are some, I think it could be a little confusing sometimes with some of the information out there. And so it's nice to have some, solid work that is a foundation that practitioners can build on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, dream work kind of falls through the cracks as to where it fits into the medical system and the education system. I mean, is dream work part of medicine? Is it part of psychiatry, of psychology, of counseling? I mean, where does it fit? This is a problem, actually. I see this as a cultural problem for us in the West. We don't currently have a viable place for dream work. Well, in our medical or in our healthcare system, and I really think we should.
I agree with you. I mean, thousands of years ago, and even not that far in the past, but there was a big emphasis on dreams and having them interpreted. And you would go to people who would help you kind of figure that out because they play such a significant role in your life.
Oh, indeed. They've been very important in many, many healing traditions throughout human history. And indeed, in the early days of psychology and psychiatry with Freud and Jung and others, they did hold a very central place. But today, in 2017, do they still have that place? I'm not so sure. I mean, and where do you go to get training if you do want to become a dream worker? That's another gap. That you kind of have to cobble together a training from here and there, and doing this workshop and that webinar and reading this book and that book, because there's no university that you can go to become a dream worker. It's a very winding path, I can tell you, because I've taken it myself.
Well, and people who are interested, let's say I'm an energy practitioner or just a practitioner, it could be any type of practitioner, and I would like to see about getting some education in regards to dream work. You offer that on your website.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it certainly is possible to get the education, and I hope people who are inspired to become dream workers, they can check out my book, and that'll give them a number of leads, and then they can figure out, well, yeah, do I really want to study this, and do I need to have another license first? But do I need to be some other kind of practitioner? And then I can use dream work within my other practice. So, there are a lot of important questions like that. Anyone who works in healthcare or who works in one-on-one helping situations with another person, sooner or later, the dream work thing is going to come knocking at their door. Somebody's going to tell them a dream. They're going to say, I had this very disturbing dream, or this frightening dream, or this fascinating dream. What do you think? And they'll tell you the dream. Right. And then what are you going to do? And are you going to jump right in and work with it? Maybe it might help for me to define what I mean by a dream worker right at the beginning.
Oh, yeah.
For me, a dream worker is just someone who can consistently help another person get more out of their dream life. That's all. So, this would be enormously helpful in almost all the helping professions, I think. Mm-hmm. So those of you who are in the helping professions of any kind, just think of adding it in as a new modality or a new method into what you're already doing. And then what I've found is, often people need the invitation to bring a dream to the table. Mm-hmm. So if you say, I'm open to working with your dreams if you'd like to do that, then lo and behold, the person might bring you a dream next time. Or they might, right there and then, they'll say, oh, really? Okay, well, I have repeating dreams of this. And they'll start talking about it right away. So you often have to extend the invitation, and you have to kind of clarify your mandate. Because let's say you're doing body work or energy work or soul coaching, mm-hmm. and you say, okay, how would you like to add in some dream work with that? So we'd spend 15 minutes in every session talking about a dream. And so you're kind of renegotiating or expanding your mandate for working with that person.
Well, and so that kind of leads me to my next question. What are some ways that we can include dream work in our daily lives now?
Well, you should start with yourself for sure. So if you're one of those people who doesn't have a regular dream work practice, then go ahead and start it. So you need to have some material to work with. So you need to be able to remember and catch hold of and record a certain number of dreams, and don't do too many. I mean, if you're one of those prolific dreamers who remembers multiple dreams every night, don't try to work with them all. I would say, I try to work with about one dream a week because, we're all pretty busy and we've got other things that are clamoring for our attention. So don't overload yourself. Pick maybe one dream a week, have a written record of it, get it as clearly as you can, and then start working with it. And if you don't know what I mean by working with it, then you need to find some kind of system. And my book, Dreamworking, is, I think, a fairly simple 5-step system. Mm-hmm. And the first step of it involves catching the dream. And when I say catching the dream, I mean remembering it and anchoring it in your long-term memory so that you haven't forgotten it by lunchtime or the next day. Because, a lot of people, they do catch hold of the dream on waking, mm-hmm. and they're pretty sure they're going to remember it, but they actually don't. It's gone. It's gone by later in the day because they didn't do, whatever it takes to get it into the long-term memory, which is different for different people. So catching hold and anchoring dreams is the first challenge for a lot of people. So, if you're one of those people, there's a whole chapter in the book devoted to methods for improving your dream recall.
And, I think that's important because a lot of times you'll get people that say, well, I just remembered as soon as I woke up, or maybe you come across people that say, well, I never remember my dreams. And and it's just like anything else that we want to be experts in, that we have to practice and practice and practice. It's not, it's not like we're going to go out, and never having run a 10K, start doing it tomorrow,
Exactly. I mean, if you're in really poor shape physically, you wouldn't expect to be in really good shape overnight or just because you decided to, right? Mm-hmm. you have to go to the gym or go running or do something for a couple of months, and then you'll notice, sure enough, hey, I'm getting in better shape. Mm-hmm. And it's very similar with dream recall. You if it's a weak muscle, then strengthen it and put some intention in it and you will find that you're getting more dreams and more clearly remembered dreams. And dreams, not only that, I found dreams that are more interesting and more communicative. Mm-hmm. Because I do think, the really fun thing about the dreaming is that you're getting a communication from your unconscious.
Yeah.
Which is guiding you, or it's trying to guide you. And a lot of people, they really don't buy that because they haven't experienced that. They find their dream life very sporadic and very chaotic, or sometimes very mundane. Mm-hmm. I've met a lot of people who say, "Oh, I just dream about my day at the office. It's exactly the same." So, I think, oh no,
it sounds like a nightmare. Actually,
you can get much more out of that, out of your dream life than that. So try to open the door to it, ask for it, and cultivate it, and it will come.
Yeah, and also when you work with a practitioner that's trained in this, it really provides a very open door, because I've had dreams, and I can't remember who it was. I think it was a nurse practitioner that I talked to about that, and she was asking me if I had spicy food the night before. I'm like, I don't think that has anything to do with it.
Right. And if you did, and it helped you remember a dream, then it's a good thing. But, that often is, the reductionistic tendency that many people look at dreams with. Oh, you just had a dream because you had some indigestible spicy food before bed. Or you just had a dream of a big ocean liner because you watched the Titanic the day before. And so they'll be reducing it to just because. Mm-hmm. And actually, if you remember a clear or interesting dream, of course it's going to have something to do with your life and something to do with what you took in the few days before that. It'll borrow material from everywhere.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that it's just because. It just means that the dream maker, or whatever it is, that part of us that makes the dream and sends it to us, it just means that function can borrow motifs and elements from anywhere, really. Mm-hmm. It's so exciting because there's nothing you can't dream about, literally.
And it really does open the door, because, with that comes great creativity, and we just end up being more open to possibilities when we expand our whole consciousness regarding the dreaming process.
Yeah. Yeah. I like to, there's a wonderful quote from Marie-Louise von Franz, the great Jungian dream worker, who said, someone asked her, why does she put so much emphasis on dreams in psychotherapy? And she said, well, what we're trying to do is train people to hear their own inner voice and follow it with the help of dreams. And I thought, when I heard that, which was way back in the mid-'80s, I said, that's right. That's what I want to do.
Yeah.
I want to be that. Because, I do believe we have an inner voice, or an inner guide function. And some of us tune it in and try to listen to it, and some of us don't.
So you've been on this path for quite some time. This is not your first rodeo,
No. Yeah, I've been doing this since about 1985. And as soon as I started, I'm a naturopath, so I work in the healthcare field. And I, right from the very, very beginning, I decided that I would be a dream worker of some kind, although I didn't call it a dream worker then, and I didn't know what that was. I said, I'm going to use dreams in my practice, because I think we do have an inner guide function, and it is trying to communicate with us and guide us. And one of the ways that it does that is through our dream life, and I don't want to miss that.
And you were ahead of your time, because no one was talking about that in the 80s.
Well, some people were, but not too many. Yeah, you're right. It wasn't really very much on the radar. I hope it's making a comeback.
I feel that it is, actually.
Yeah.
I think that people are more interested in that inward dive and just that whole experience, because there's so much that goes on with our dreams or our consciousness. And so we really do want to tap into that so we can get a better understanding of who it is that we are.
Exactly. Yeah, and I think, we're coming into kind of a simpler way of looking at dreams. I think a lot of people now, they do not any longer believe that you have to make a sophisticated psychoanalytic interpretation of your dream. That you don't need to. It's really a lot simpler than that. All you need to do is figure out how the dream connects to your life. That's all. And one of the best ways to do that, in my experience, is to kind of shift your question, your opening question, from what does the dream mean to what is the dream asking for. Most people, as soon as they talk about a dream, they'll say, "Oh, what does that mean?" They'll go to the meaning thing right away, and it's very fascinating. Of course, I understand why they do, but try this. If you've had a dream recently, try forgetting the meaning thing. Don't worry about the meaning thing. Shift the question to, what is this dream asking me for? And you'll find yourself, I think, right in the middle of working with the dream when you do that. You're not standing outside it, kind of looking at it as a fascinating artifact and saying, what does that mean? Wow, that's fascinating. You're in it. You kind of re-enter it and you say, what does this dream want me to do? And in my experience, that's a much more powerful, more dynamic position, and it's much more geared to self-understanding and personal growth, which is what I'm really interested in.
Oh, yeah. Well, and so what are some tips for our listeners that they can start using today to capture their dreams?
Yeah. The first thing is figure out which of the 3 areas of dream recall that you're having trouble with. So are you having trouble with having a dream in the first place? Or are you having trouble catching a hold of the dream as you wake up? Or are you having trouble with remembering it long term? Or all 3? If you're all 3, then you got some work to do. So let's briefly go through the solutions for each of these. If you feel you're not having any dream recall at all, then you need to do some heavy-duty intention setting. You need to ask for dreams before bed. You need to say, please send me a dream tonight, and if you do, I will try to catch hold of it and work with it. And that intention setting is, sounds simple, but it's the most profound thing you can do to get the whole axis working again. Another thing that works if you have old dreams, and a lot of people say, way back in the day, I used to remember dreams all the time, but I haven't remembered one for several years. So what's going on there? Why did their dream maker stop sending dreams all of a sudden? What I tell them to do is to think of an old dream and revisit it as if they had it just last night, and re-enter it and work with it, to phrase the question, what was this dream asking me for back in 1994? And as if it was a current thing. And, if you remember a dream from a long time ago, if it stayed with you for whatever reason, it probably is still valid. It's still trying to tell you something or get you to do something. So that will often start up the whole dream flow again by revisiting an old dream. So now then the second problem, catching hold in the morning. So there you are in bed and you're waking up, and a lot of people say, I know I've been dreaming, but I just can't grab it as I'm waking up. So 2 things I would suggest there. One, give yourself slow, gradual wake-up time where you don't jump out of bed to turn off the alarm, or, it's kind of drifting in and out of sleep. I liken it to standing on a beach. You're still on the sand of the shore, but you're also in the water. You're right on the borderline. You're in sleep, but you're also awake. So your ego consciousness is awake, and your self-awareness is back online, but you're also very close to the dream, and you can go back into the dream often. You can say, oh yeah, I just dreamt I was in a cemetery. Okay, and you go imagine going back into the cemetery or whatever. Mm-hmm. So that's cultivating that in between time and giving yourself at least once a week. Let yourself have that. And then the second thing is what I call capture a cue. It's a very simple technique where if you need to go back to sleep and you don't want to wake yourself up fully to write down a dream, because sleep is important too, or if you need to jump out of bed and start your day, before you do that, write down one word from the dream or one image. Do a little drawing of one image. And then go ahead and go back to sleep or go ahead and get up. But then later, when you look at that one word, let's say you wrote cemetery, mm-hmm. then the whole thing might come flooding back to you because you caught that one little cue. So that's a good technique if you're kind of challenged in the catching hold of department. And then the third problem, which is the long-term memory department, you've got to find out what it is that enables you to remember a dream an hour later, 2 hours later, that afternoon, the next day. For some people, this is very difficult. And you know what? Surprisingly, writing it down doesn't necessarily work. It's very interesting. You think it would. That is
interesting.
Yeah, but it's happened to me hundreds of times, literally. Someone comes down with their dream journal. They bring it to the session. Mm-hmm. They start reading a dream, and they look up at me, and they say, I have absolutely no memory of this. It's just words on a page. Yeah. It's not alive. They can't go back into it and feel it and see it, So whatever it takes for that long-term anchoring, do that. For some people, I think, actually need to speak it aloud to another person. So if you have a life partner, who is willing to listen to your dreams, or a good friend, that may be the solution. Tell them one dream a week.
Well,
for me,
that's kind of nice because you get this support system and you can kind of share each other's dreams.
Yeah. Yeah, well, it's a wonderful thing to do, dream sharing. Mm-hmm. If you don't have a dream sharing buddy, that's something I really would recommend. As you think, like, let's see, who would want to share one dream a week or even one dream a month with me, mm-hmm. and we could do it reciprocally. We could listen to each other's dreams. Wonderful thing to do.
That is.
Yeah.
And so in the process of doing all this, we keep a dream journal so we can, of course, we're keeping track of what's going on and we can revisit some of these. Are we also looking for themes, like, any kind of repetitive themes?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I think, if you look at my book, you'll see the whole last part of it, the last third of it is about common dream motifs. Mm-hmm. And to help familiarize you with the common motifs that happen again and again in people's dreams. Now, what I mean by motif is kind of like a pattern that appears in a dream. For example, a scary figure knocking at your door and you're terrified, or a scary figure pursuing you down a road and you're terrified. That's a motif. It's a very common motif that almost everyone has had probably multiple dreams with that motif.
Yeah.
So that, if you recognize that, that's what I call a shadow motif, meaning 9 times out of 10, that's a part of you trying to get your attention or trying to connect with you. So, and in Jungian psychology, that's often called a shadow figure, meaning it's a true part of you, but it's lurking in the shadows. Mm-hmm. You don't know much about it yet, and you're afraid of it. So if you recognize that motif you're already, not only does it help you remember the dream, but it helps you start to get a sense of why you had that dream and what it might be asking you for. So you're already right in the middle of doing some good dream work with it, just because you read a book and it helped familiarize you with this type of motif, and then all of a sudden your brain's going, I recognize that. That's a shadow motif. That's asking me to turn around, to stop running away, and turn around and say, hey, who are you? Why are you pursuing me? What do you want? And then immediately you'll be right in the middle of some very valuable dream work.
And I think that having that information is so empowering to a lot of people, because they can be an active participant in their dream as opposed to having things happen to them.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So many people who have versions of that scary shadow dream, they just feel victimized by it. They never get the sense that they could actually be proactive or do anything about it. They just suffer it again and again and again. I'm not exaggerating when I say many people go through their entire lives being scared by this type of dream, and they never turn and face the figure and say, who are you? What do you want? And as soon as you do that, everything changes. It's so dynamic. So that's what we mean by dream work. See, you're not just suffering passively the situation of the dream again and again. You're actually proactively working with it. You're saying, okay, I'm going to go back into this dream and I'm going to change the outcome. And when I say go back into it, I mean while you're awake. You remember the dream, you use your visual imagination to re-enter the dreamscape, but instead of running away scared like you always do, you say, wait a minute, I'm going to turn around and face this pursuer. And I visualize turning around. There he is, right there. I look at him right in the eye, and I say, who are you? Now, you're doing re-entry dream work right now. And it's very powerful, because now you've changed this whole repetitive situation that's been haunting your dream life all these years. And now something new is going to happen.
There's a great amount of freedom that comes with that, being able to face those things and eventually, kind of watch them dissolve and move beyond it. Gosh, Dr. Christopher, I wish we had more time.
Are we out of time already?
I know. This is just too much fun. Everyone can definitely pick up your book, Dreamworking, it's of course on Amazon and all major retailers. Where can our listeners connect with you to learn more about Dreamworking?
Well, my website is essentially my name, so ChristopherSowton.com. So you can just go on there, and there's lots of these tips that I'm talking about are on there, and news of upcoming dream events and other people who are working with dreams in different ways. So go check out the website, and then there are links to the book there too, and you can read a free chapter of the book, and see if it's the right thing for you, and then go ahead and get yourself a copy. Then start working with your dreams. For me, it's not just about fascination. Yes, dreams are fascinating, but it's about actually doing something with them and changing your life as the result of insights that you get from your dreams.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Dr. Christopher. I so appreciate you spending the time with us here today.
Well, you're very welcome. It's been a lot of fun.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Christopher. It's been such a joy to have you here. Unfortunately, we're at the end of our time today. I'd like to thank everyone for taking the time to tune in. You've been listening to Moments with Marianne. And remember, make every moment count.
In a single moment, your life can change. Moments with Marianne is a transformative hour that covers an endless array of topics with the best of the best. Her guests are leaders in their fields, ranging from inspirational authors, top industry leaders, and business and spiritual entrepreneurs. Each guest is gifted and a true visionary, a recognized leader in her own work, and while teaching others to develop, refocus, and grow, Marianne will bring the best guest and sometimes a special surprise. Don't miss this. You never know just which moment will change your life forever. Moments with Marianne airs every Thursday, Friday, and Sunday at 8 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Mountain Time. Make sure to tune in and visit momentswithmarianne.com for more information.